Hello and welcome to PRSay. This is the podcast of the Public Relations Society of America, Houston chapter. I'm your host, Veronica Sofer, and I have the pleasure of bringing to you amazing members so that we can connect and grow and learn a little bit more about each other. So when we do connect in person, we know exactly who we're talking about and we can find commonalities to really grow our network. So I'm very excited about today's episode. But before we get started, I want to take care of some housekeeping. If you are listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of PRSay. And if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, drop us some comments so my guests and I can go back and connect with you. We will go ahead and bring on our guest today. We have the amazing Sparkle Bell joining us. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So excited about you being on today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I am currently the Director of Communications for the Harris County Flood Control District. I started my career in news, working on the assignments desk at two local television stations in the area, and had what I'd like to say a really life-changing experience where I'd called a mother of a fallen soldier while she was on the way to the funeral of her son. And that really sort of changed my perspective and desire to continue in news. And from there, I went on and started my PR career at Centerpoint Energy. So shout out to all the Centerpoint Energy people listening in. I literally learned everything I know and attribute a lot of my success in this field to the individuals that mentored me at Centerpoint Energy. Spent several years there and eventually landed at the City of Pearland, where I worked for 6 years as Director of Communications and really built their communications program from the ground up. So think started their social media platforms. They knew nothing about e-marketing, started e-marketing. We weren't live streaming our city council meetings, so started that process. And now it's funny because I look at the work that that group is doing and it has continued to evolve. And so I had a really great time there at Centerpoint Energy. And then I did a little bit of a parlay into some retail work, did community relations and media relations for a while, and then landed where I am now at Harris County Flood Control District. I always joke that I must appear to love disaster communication. And that's in part because nearly every role that I've had has had some level of crisis communications. And it's been quite an experience, but I've had a lot of great experiences throughout my career that have helped me to evolve and grow.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And I know what you mean about getting drawn into certain spaces. Tell us a little bit about how you have incorporated your leadership and your expertise in communications, especially with crisis communication. And I know you've had a lot of experience. And when you're serving the public, it looks a little bit different. But how has that really helped you grow in your network, especially with our organization?
Oh, it absolutely has helped me grow in my network. I've learned a lot through making mistakes, and I think you can't be afraid to make mistakes. I think back to Hurricane Ike and working at Centerpoint Energy. I was on the front lines when millions of customers lost their power, and I was at the helm supporting communications to the general public. And that is something that really taught me what I like to think are like career changing experiences, because there is no pressure like a lot of elected officials and the general public not having their power.
Amen.
Yes, so I learned so much through experiences like that, and it's only grown, through my time at the City of Pearland, even working through hurricanes, and Hurricane Harvey being one example when the entire city was surrounded by water, and we couldn't get in or out, and I'm working 12-hour shifts and trying to make sure that the information that I'm communicating is accurate to the general public, because in some instances it was life-saving information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say is for our colleagues in the agency world or who are in the private sector, that safety and really the commitment to the community it weighs on us differently for those of us who serve in the public sector. And we've had some members, some PRSA members who have worked in the same space we are. But your communication strategies and techniques have to look a little bit different when it's about safety.
Oh, absolutely. I think when it's about safety, but also when it's for the public sector, the way I handle media is different in the public sector than the way I handle it in the private sector. And because I've had the ability to work in both, I understand how clear that distinction is. You know, when you think about a public sector request, if I tell a reporter no or don't want to answer a question, they can put in a public information request and get that same information. Whereas you can do a little bit of a dance when it's the private sector. So you have to make adjustments sort of based, but ultimately the goals are very similar, if not the same, in terms of presenting the best information and ensuring that the organization or the agency that you represent or the company that you represent is presented in the best light. And I think, you know, reporters have a job to do, and so do we as PR professionals. And it's a delicate balance.
Yeah, it really is. And that dance is important when we're trying to balance, community safety, governmental transparency. We're accountable to the taxpayer. It's a whole nother world. And that's not what you learn in journalism school or communication school when you're learning about public relations. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. I had a former boss sit me down when I was just starting out in working in government and say that you are to do nothing that you would not um, feel okay about becoming public. So everything that I did, I looked at it from the perspective of how will I feel if someone in the public knows that I do this? And so that puts this extra level and layer of scrutiny on everything you do. And that's a lot of pressure to put on anyone.
Mhm.
But you know, something that we have to contend with working for government entities.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. Switching gears just a little bit, tell me about how you utilize our chapters in events, whether they're virtual or in person, or how you utilize maybe the Excalibur Awards or any of the programming to benefit your career.
Oh, so I am an APR, and with that APR designation, you almost get really pulled into the work that the chapter does. So I've been on the board for a number of years prior to when there was a foundation that was the charitable arm of the chapter. I was president and on the board there. You really do get pulled into a lot of different areas. And Excalibur Awards, this year I'm chairing it, so I'm really excited about those awards. There are just so many resources in the chapter that I don't even know that I understood until, you know, I'd say the past 5 or 6 years. I've probably been a member now 15 or so years. And the resources are just abound. Like when I talk to some of the presidents, the former presidents of the chapter, I'm just amazed at how much wisdom that they have to share. And so my membership in PRSA is really the gift that keeps on giving. And it's why I continue to devote my time and my energy into it. And, you know, in a lot of ways, it's helped me grow. You know, when I think back to just making the decision to pursue the APR, it was because a PRSA member had that designation and really shared with me the importance of it and how it could help me to grow in my career. And it's done that, you know, 10 times over.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I encourage members all the time to learn about it. This may not be the right time in your career, but is there ever really a right time? So we really try to create opportunities for our members to figure out how best to pursue that depending on what their goals are. So I love that you said that. Sparkle, what's one last bit of advice you'd give to a new member coming into our chapter?
Well, I want to throw in one more thing about the
Please.
APR. So I started that process once before I actually received my APR, and then I had to start over because my timeline ran out. So I encourage you, if you're considering doing the APR, fill out the questionnaire before you submit your application. And I can't emphasize enough that it's one of the best things that I've done. It has grown me in so many ways as a professional, and it's highlighted skills that I already had, but it's helped me to really develop them further. So I encourage everyone to get their APR. And then And in terms of any sort of new advice, it's really just the membership is what you make of it. So attending programs, participating in events, and meeting individuals, we'll do our part as board members and committee heads to try to pull you in, but it's also on you to really get connected in the organization and get the most use out of the membership.
Yeah, I agree. And don't be afraid to walk up to someone and say, "Hey, I saw you or heard you on the PRSay podcast. Tell me a little bit more about XYZ." And that really is a groundbreaker, because if you just show up and you're not introducing yourself, pushing into conversations, then you're not leveraging the membership the way it was designed to. So I always recommend folks to just walk up and say hello and just start chatting.
Absolutely.
And so, Sparkle, how can people connect with you? How's the best way to find out more about you or send you a message?
So I have sparklebell.com. You can find out more information about me there. I'm Sparkle A Bell on most social media platforms, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
That's awesome. Well, I don't think we're connected, so I'm going to do that as soon as we get off the show today.
Absolutely.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I loved having you, and I can't wait to meet you in person.
Yes, I can't wait to meet you as well. Thank you so much for hosting.
All right. Be sure to connect with Sparkle. Her contact will be in the show notes. If you are watching on Facebook or on YouTube, drop us some comments so that she and I can go back and connect. You want to get to know Sparkle for sure. And if you are listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of PRSay, because this is how you get connected to the members in the Houston chapter of PRSA. So with that, we are signing off, and we will see you next time.